Isfahan, 1632. Inside the royal harem, behind walls thicker than your arm span, 40 women are about to die. Not in battle, not from plague. By order, one night. The bloody Mabas, February 20th. Shah Safi signs death warrants with wine on his breath and blood on his mind. 40 royal women, mothers of princes, daughters of kings, sisters of potential rivals. All threats, all eliminated. Before sunrise, the harem floors run red. Welcome to the Safavid imperial system, where silk met slavery, where poetry met paranoia, and where the wrong glance at the wrong moment could end with your body dumped in an unmarked pit. But nobody wants to discuss what happened in the harem. The systematic trade in human flesh, the burning alive, the stabbings, the children ripped from mothers, the forced conversions, the eunuch networks that ran deeper than any conspiracy you can imagine. This is not legend. This is documented. European merchants saw it, wrote it down, dated it, and we have the receipts. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Jean Chardin's Voyages, the Shirley Brothers travelogues published in 1683, Adam Ilarius's accounts from 1647, and Susan Babe's Slaves of the Shah, published 2004 by Bloomsbury Academic, alongside peer-reviewed studies in the Journal of Asian and African Studies and Social Sciences from 2021. These aren't Wikipedia summaries. These are primary 17th century eyewitness accounts, cross-checked with modern archaeological and archival research. Now back to the information. The Safavid dynasty, 1501 to 1736, 235 years, founded by Shah Ismail I when he was 13 years old. He converted Iran from Sunni to Shia Islam with mass forced conversions and executions. But Ismail died young, 36 years old. 1524, and his successors built something darker, a harem system that consumed thousands of lives, literally. Shah Sultan Hussein's court at the end, 1694 to 1722, 5,000 slaves, male and female, black and white, 100 black eunuchs alone. 5,000 human beings owned by one family, living in sex segregation, serving, bleeding, dying. Christian territories trapped between Persian Shia power to the east and Ottoman Sunni power to the west. Islamic law made it simple: non-Muslims from non-Muslim lands, kafir from Dar al-Harb, war captives, legitimate by legal definition. Shah Abbas I, 1587 to 1629, the so-called Great One, enslaved 130,000 men and women in a single campaign against the kingdom of Kartli Kaketi. One campaign, 130,000 souls, marched south, separated by age and gender, sold or distributed. 15,000 Georgians captured in another raid in 1795. The numbers don't lie. When Russia annexed Crimea in 1783 and shut down that pipeline, the trade redirected, straight from the Caucasus Mountains to Isfahan. Circassian women became the gold standard, legendary beauty. That's what the sources say. That's what drove the prices. Virgin girls arriving as children, some as young as 6 years old, gifted to the Sultan, gifted to the Shah. The Ottoman Sultan, Ahmed III, received 100 Circassian virgin girls as presents when he took the throne. Presents. Human beings wrapped like jewelry. Eastern Georgia was under Persian protection until 1783. Protection meant payment. Payment meant children. Regular slave tributes of Georgian boys and girls, handed over by their own nobles. Diplomatic gifts to keep the peace. Until the Treaty of Georgievsk in 1783 transferred Georgian protection to Russia. Only then did the tributes stop. The Armenian Christians faced it too, forced to provide girls and male youths as tributes to Safavid rulers until 1780. This wasn't raiding. This was systematic, scheduled, expected. Khiva merchants disguising Kazakh slaves as Kalmyks to fetch better prices. Everyone played the game, everyone profited, except the merchandise. Staffed by female slaves and eunuchs who controlled every channel to the outside world. The Safavid monarchs preferred to procreate through slave concubines. Why? Strategy. Neutralize potential ambitions from relatives and in-laws, protect patrimony, keep power concentrated. If your mother was a slave with no family connections, she brought no tribal alliances, no rival claimants, no complications. The slave concubines, called khanas after forced conversion to Shia Islam, consisted mainly of Circassian, Georgian, and Armenian women, captured as war booty, bought at slave markets, received as gifts from local potentates. Some free Persian Muslim daughters were gifted by their own families or taken by the royal household to become concubines. Their families gave them away. Why? Access? Influence? The chance that their daughter might bear a son, might become the mother of a Shah. That kind of proximity to power was worth selling your daughter into sexual servitude. These women were educated, trained in accomplishments, music, poetry, dance, then either became consorts or served as maids to the consorts. Teresa Samsonia, famous example, educated in the imperial harem. One of the few we know by name. Inherited the throne at 18 after his grandfather systematically killed or blinded all his own sons to prevent rivals. Safi inherited a purged court, and he kept purging. Ruthlessly eliminated anyone he viewed as a threat. Executed almost all remaining Safavid royal princes, leading courtiers. Generals. He paid little attention to governing, never learned to read or write properly, preferred drinking wine and indulging his opium addiction. But he maintained one consistent policy: control through fear. Named after Mabas, a date that would echo through Persian history, Shah Safi ordered 40 females of the harem put to death in a single night. 40 women, not concubines alone. These were royal women, mothers, daughters, female grandchildren on both the male and female lines. Why? Dynastic security. Shah Abbas I had killed his sons and imprisoned his grandsons to avoid political conspiracies. When Abbas died in 1629, open rivalry erupted between the male grandchildren and cousins. 3 years of scheming, plotting, faction building. Safi's solution was final: kill the men, blind the survivors, then kill 40 women to eliminate any claims from the female line. Female royals who might bear sons, who might marry into rival houses, who might whisper in the wrong ears. Safi removed all the royal slaves of Abbas I. All the Kizilbash supporters, all the officials called Marashi, all the sons-in-law called Damad, the entire support network, gone. The 1632 Safavid harem massacre reorganized the dynasty. All alternative family lines eliminated. This wasn't passion. This was political engineering written in blood. A wife. In a drunken rage or cold calculation, we don't know, but she's dead. He also executed his Grand Vizier, Mirza Taleb Khan, replaced him with Mirza Muhammad Taqi Khan, known as Saru Taqi, the blonde one. Saru Taqi was a eunuch. As a eunuch, he had access to the royal harem. He used that access to forge relations with the Shah's concubines, influenced Safi through pillow talk, channeled through enslaved women, persuaded him to expand crown lands, the eunuch-concubine alliance. It was the real government. According to one account in Arcangelo Lamberti's Relation de la Colchide ou Mengreli from 1654, Safi died in a drinking contest with Shidan Chiladze, a Georgian drinking champion invited from Mingrelia, specifically for the competition. He drank himself to death. Left behind a country smaller than when he inherited it. Lost Baghdad to the Ottomans, despite the Treaty of Zuhab in 1639. Lost Kandahar to the Mughals, weak-minded, lacking charisma. That's how modern historians describe him. But during his 13-year reign, he demonstrated that violence was policy. His mother, Ana Khanum, was a Circassian slave concubine, daughter of Gurlu Beg, himself a former slave. Ana only gained political standing in the harem because she produced the Shah's male heir. She distinguished herself from other nameless concubines through biology, one son. That's all it took. Mohammad Mirza grew up in the royal harem, surrounded by women and eunuchs. No military training, no administrative experience, tutored by Rajab Ali Tabrizi until he died in 1670. His father Safi tried to have him blinded, standard practice. But a sympathetic eunuch, whose job was literally to blind the princes, helped Muhammad feign blindness until Safi died. He survived by pretending to be disabled. This is how princes prepared for rule. Barely, too young to rule. Regency led by Saru Taqi, his father's grand vizier. The same eunuch who had accessed the harem and controlled his father, now controlled him. Saru Taqi had a close relationship with Ana Khanum. Jean Chardin, the French jeweler who lived in Isfahan and wrote the most detailed Western account of 17th century Iran, observed their connection. Ana ruled the realm through Saru Taqi, the queen mother and the eunuch. During Abbas II's minority, they ran Persia. Abbas received formal education during the regency, something he'd been denied before. At age 10, still illiterate, but sharp, energetic, with a sense of justice that surprised his tutors. October 11th, 1645. Army officers assassinated Saru Taqi, a faction angered by the Treaty of 1639 that ceded Iraq to the Ottomans. Abbas was 15. He demanded exhaustive investigation, imposed the death penalty on even the highest officers involved, emerged from the crisis as an unexpectedly forceful ruler, asserted his authority, purged the bureaucracy, began his absolute rule. For the next 2 decades, Abbas II maintained relative peace. No major Ottoman wars, friendly relations with the Uzbeks. He recovered Kandahar from the Mughals in 1648, defended it successfully. Built the Chihil Sultan Palace with its famous wall paintings, commissioned religious scholars, supported arts and architecture, by most accounts, competent, even tolerant. He attended Armenian church services, gave permission for Jesuits to establish a mission in Isfahan in 1653, dismissed clerics who preached against Christians. Jean Chardin documented this. The Shirley brothers confirmed it in their published travelogues. He also burned another wife, not clear if free or slave, for lying about her menstruation period, burned alive, for biological functions and religious timing. The sources don't say when exactly. Don't say where in the palace grounds, but they're clear on the method. Fire and the reason, his wrath. 5,000 slaves by the end of the dynasty under Sultan Hussein, 100 black eunuchs managing the female quarters, ethnic rivalries. From the middle of the 16th century, rivalries between Georgian and Circassian women in the royal harem gave rise to dynastic struggles of an ethnic nature previously unknown at court. Circassian mothers pushing their sons, Georgian mothers countering. Both groups competing for the Shah's favor, for their sons' positions, for survival. The mothers of rival princes, together with eunuchs, engaged in palace intrigues to place their candidate on the throne. When your property and your son is your only asset, you fight. Initially, black eunuchs, then white eunuchs from Georgia, starting with Shah Abbas I. They performed various tasks at many levels of the harem and the general court, offices in the royal treasury. Tutors and adoptive fathers to non-castrated slaves selected to become slave soldiers called gilman. They served as channels between the secluded harem women and the outside world. That position, that access, that's where power lived. When Shah Abbas II died, September 25, 1666, palace eunuchs engineered the succession of his son, Suleiman I, effectively seized control of the state. Suleiman, originally crowned as Safi II in 1666, had another coronation in 1668 after his court astrologers persuaded him the first hadn't worked, took the name Suleiman I, set up a privy council that included the most important eunuchs in the harem, deprived traditional state institutions of their functions. The eunuchs' influence over military and civil affairs was only checked by their internal rivalries and their religious movement led by Muhammad Bakir Majlisi. A castrated slave class ran Persia. Let's talk about the system that made this possible. Shah Abbas I, the Great One, started the policy that destroyed the dynasty. He largely banished royal princes to the harem. Before, princes were placed with a lala, high-ranking Kizilbash chief who acted as guardian. Eventually given charge of important governorates. Dangerous because it encouraged regional rebellions, but it gave princes education, military training, administrative experience, dealing with the aristocracy, prepared them for rule. Abbas changed it. Princes confined to the harem. Social interactions limited to ladies and eunuchs, no administrative training, no military experience, no contact with the aristocracy. Combined with indulgent upbringing, this made them unprepared for royal responsibilities, often uninterested. The confinement of royal princes to the harem was an important factor in the Safavid dynasty's decline. Every historian agrees you can't learn to rule an empire from inside a gilded cage surrounded by slaves and castrated men. The royal harem reached such proportions under Sultan Hussein, 1668 to 1726, that it consumed a large part of state revenues, not a small budget line, a large part, feeding 5,000 slaves, housing them, clothing them, guarding them. The 100 black eunuchs alone required salaries, food, quarters. Add the infrastructure, the buildings, the walls, the separate water systems, the kitchens, the baths, the security, the constant replenishment as women aged out or died, new captures, new purchases, new tributes. The harem was economically unsustainable. While the Safavid military weakened, while the Uzbeks raided, while the Ottomans threatened, the court was spending its treasury on a slave system that produced weak rulers. Multiple causes. Syphilis, throat cancer from excessive drinking, various other debilities. He was 34 years old, spent his last decade withdrawing from state affairs to engage in sexual activities and drinking parties, through luxurious parties. Hid from the public for 2 or 3 weeks afterward. By the end, couldn't function. Buried in calm, succeeded by his eldest son, Sam Mirza, later Suleiman, mother Nakihat Khanum, another Georgian concubine, another enslaved woman whose only claim to history was bearing the right child. Modern historians describe Abbas II as the last strong king of the Safavid dynasty, strong, despite burning women alive, despite withdrawing into debauchery, despite allowing eunuchs to seize the state machinery, strong only by comparison to what came after. Suleiman ruled 28 years, 1666 to 1694, withdrew into his harem during his second coronation in 1668, indulged in sex and binge drinking, unconcerned about the nation, would go months without a public appearance. No notable conflicts or uprisings during his reign, but the Safavid army fell apart. Uzbeks and Kalmyks invaded repeatedly. He died July 29, 1694, from long-term drinking and gout. Never commanded an army, never policed his realm. Handed control to eunuchs, harem queens, and Shi'i high clergy. First Safavid Shah to completely abandon governance. Kerman by Baloch tribes in 1698. Khorasan by the Hotakis in 1717. Constantly in Mesopotamia by Sunni Arabs. He tried to forcibly convert his Afghan subjects in Kandahar from Sunni to Shia. They revolted. In 1722, Afghan invaders from the east reached Isfahan itself. The dynasty collapsed. Civil wars followed, widespread suffering, the Afghan occupation. The whole magnificent enterprise that Shah Ismail started in 1501 ended in chaos. If you value documented history that doesn't sanitize the past, subscribe. Comment which country you're watching from. This is the midpoint, so let's reinforce the sources. This script uses John Chardin's 10-volume Voyages, published 1611, and considered the finest Western scholarship on Safavid Iran. Anthony and Robert Shirley's travelogues from 1683. Adam O'Leary's accounts, published 1647 after visiting Persia in 1636. Modern academic work from Susan Babay, Catherine Babayan, Ina Bagdians McCabe, and Musameh Farhad in Slaves of the Shah, Bloomsbury Academic, 2004. Thomas Ricks in the Journal of Asian and African Studies from 2001 on Safavid slave trading. Ladan Rabari's work in Social Sciences from 2021. These sources cross-check, they corroborate. They use archival documents, European diplomatic reports, Dutch East India Company records, and Safavid court chronicles. Now back to the information. The women were property, Khanis, slave girls. If they were originally Christian, forced conversion to Shia Islam upon entering the harem. Sometimes, other times kept in their faith, depending on political needs. Shah Safi had 3 permanent marriages and 300 concubines and slave girls according to Adam Olearius, who visited the court. 300 women for one man's use. Marriage in the early Islamic period was a family matter. Kin arranged it. But in the Safavid period, the numbers reached hundreds for elite men and royals. These weren't just marriages, these were collections. Concubinage, slavery, and marriage blurred together. Concubinage served more than sexual and procreation functions. It was political, gifting attractive women to the king, positioning women in the royal harem. These were ways to solve uncertain political competition, ensure loyalties. Hamid's 2017 study in Concubines and Courtesans, Women in Slavery in Islamic History, Oxford University Press, makes this clear. The inclusion of free women among the ranks of royal concubines, despite the ready availability of female slaves, suggests concubinage served the political characteristics of familial bonds. But that doesn't mean these women weren't sexual slaves. They were both. Politically useful and sexually exploited simultaneously. The Ottoman imperial harem had 104 female slaves during the reign of Murad III, 1574 to 1595, grew to 295 in 1622, 433 in 1633. The Safavids were operating within a broader Islamic imperial pattern, but they added their own innovations: ethnic diversity, Circassians, Georgians, Armenians, Russians, Turkmen, each group with its own internal hierarchy, its own networks, creating what scholars call a competitive and sometimes lethal arena of ethnic politics. Cliques of women and courtiers vying for the king's attention, sometimes literally lethal. Remember the burnings, the stabbings. But there's a fourth. Gifts, slaves given as gifts. Armenian tribute gifts continued until 1780, Georgian tribute gifts until 1783, but also individual gifts. A provincial governor sends the Shah a beautiful Circassian girl. A tribal chief offers his prettiest captive. European sources describe the Caucasus as a region where poverty drove the trade. The Circassians are poor, and their daughters are beautiful, and indeed, it is in them they chiefly trade. That's from multiple 17th century accounts. They furnish with those beauties the seraglio of the Turkish Sultan, of the Persian Shah, and all those wealthy enough to purchase and maintain such precious merchandise. These maidens are instructed how to fondle and caress men, taught dances of a very polite and effeminate kind, how to heighten by the most voluptuous artifices the pleasures of their disdainful masters. This was a documented industry, a luxury slave trade route providing elite slaves. But the vast majority are nameless, recorded only as khanis, as property in ledgers, as numbers in budgets. Female slaves had, in some aspects, more freedom than free Muslim women. Not viewed as respectable women, they were allowed to move about alone in public without veils, mingle with men in public places like coffee houses, less harshly punished for extramarital sexual relationships. British traveler Ella Sykes wrote that Iran was the paradise for slaves. But that's a comparative statement. Paradise compared to what? compared to free women locked in sex segregation. That's a low bar. These women were still slaves, could be sold, inherited, given away, could be burned alive for refusing to drink, stabbed for disobedience. Trained by eunuchs who acted as tutors and adoptive fathers, the Ghilman formed a military slave corps loyal only to the Shah. No tribal affiliations, no family connections to rival power centers. Shah Abbas I expanded this system massively. An Armenian from Georgia served as the army's commander-in-chief for more than 15 years, 1595 to 1613. Estimated 1,000 military slaves and 3,000 eunuchs serving the Shah in Isfahan. Some held elite positions. This tremendous growth of elite slavery provoked a religious backlash. The ulama objected. Georgian and Armenian converts dominated politically. The ulama doubted their sincerity. Military and administrative slavery declined after Abbas II ordered Saru Taqi's murder in 1645 and undertook a return to Shia orthodoxy, but it never disappeared. But we know eunuchs came from two sources. Some purchased already castrated, others castrated after capture, black eunuchs primarily, then white eunuchs from Georgia. Saru Taqi, the Grand Vizier, was castrated due to his promiscuous behavior around young boys, according to Chardin. But he maintained his position. Rose higher. Castration didn't end political careers, sometimes enhanced them. Access to the harem was power. The procedure itself was brutal. Pre-modern surgical techniques, no anesthesia, high mortality rates. Survivors faced lifelong complications, but also lifelong careers at the highest levels of the state if they were shrewd. A parallel government. Traditional state institutions lost functions as the harem bureaucracy expanded, especially under Suleiman when the eunuch privy council took over. The physical space of the harem, the buildings and quarters, were designed for control, limited entry points. Guards at every passage. Women couldn't leave without explicit permission of the Valid Sultan, the mother of the Shah. Eunuchs directly reported to her. The power of the Valid Sultan over concubines extended to questions of life and death. Iran converted from Sunni to Shia under Shah Ismail I. Forced conversions, executions of those who resisted. This religious transformation affected the harem system. Shia Islam has different jurisprudential rulings on slavery and concubinage than Sunni Islam. Both permit it under Islamic law. But the Safavids added a Shia dimension. Twelver Shi'ism, the hidden imam. The Safavid Shahs claimed descent from Musa al-Kazim, the seventh imam. This gave them religious legitimacy, but it also created tension with the Mojtahids, the religious scholars. The Mojtahids believed all secular governments were illegitimate until the return of the 12th imam. Any temporal authority was usurpation of the imam's constitutional right. This rivalry between Safavid Shahs and Mojtahids came into the open even before the dynasty was established. Continued throughout. As the Shahs weakened and withdrew into harems, the ulama gained power. By Sultan Hassan's reign, Muhammad Baqir Majlisi and the Shia religious establishment essentially controlled the administration. Eunuchs and clerics splitting the corpse. The economic impact beyond the harem budget. The slave trade itself was commerce, a major sector. Slave dealers at markets, transportation networks, insurance for valuable cargo, multiple markets, Constantinople, Cairo, Isfahan, local markets in provincial centers. Prices varied by perceived beauty, age, virginity, skills. Georgian and Russian girls bought for the imperial Ottoman harem of Ahmed III varied between 150 kurush and 250 kurush. Some cost up to 320 kurush. In the Safavid court, similar pricing. Beautiful Circassian virgins commanded premium rates. The merchants made fortunes. The transporters, the guards, the middlemen, all profiting. Meanwhile, the societies being raided suffered constant population loss. Young women and boys taken. Demographics skewed. Communities weakened. The contrast with the outside world. While Safavid Iran was operating this system, Europe was undergoing the Renaissance and early Enlightenment. Still had slavery, yes. Still had exploitation. But increasingly questioning it. The intellectual ferment that would lead to abolitionism was starting. Locke, Rousseau. Later, Voltaire and the philosophes. They read the accounts of Chardin and the Shirley brothers, used them to construct ideas about Oriental despotism, about the dangers of absolute power, about the need for constitutional limits. The irony is that European imperialism would eventually use these same arguments about Oriental despotism to justify colonialism, the civilizing mission, bringing freedom to the enslaved East. Never mind that European powers were simultaneously running the Atlantic slave trade. The transatlantic system, millions of Africans, hypocrisy on all sides. Loss of military capability. When the Afghans invaded in 1722, Isfahan fell quickly. The Safavid army couldn't defend the capital. Sultan Hussein surrendered. The Afghan occupation was brutal. Massacres, famine. The Safavid royal family hunted down, some executed, some escaped. The harem system that had operated for over 2 centuries ended in chaos. The thousands of slaves scattered, some freed in the turmoil, some captured by the Afghans, some sold again into new markets, their fates largely unrecorded. Nader Shah rose in the 1730s, a military strongman who briefly reunited the territory. But he was Sunni, not Shia, didn't maintain the same harem structure. After him, the Afsharid and Zand dynasties, eventually the Qajars in 1794. The Qajars revived aspects of the harem system, still used slaves, still maintained concubines, the same Caucasus trade routes, but on a smaller scale. The Qajar court never reached 5,000 slaves, and by the 19th century, European pressure increased. The 1828 war with Russia ended the import of white slaves from the Russian Empire borderlands, undermined the trade in Circassians and Georgians. Both Iran and Turkey had practiced it for centuries. Gone. The British pushed for abolition throughout the Islamic world. Used gunboat diplomacy, trade restrictions, the same Britain that was running colonial extraction economies. But the pressure worked. Slavery in Iran gradually declined, not abolished officially until the 20th century under Reza Shah, but by then, the system was mostly dead. What did the Safavid harem system leave behind? First, genetic legacy. Many modern Iranians have Caucasus ancestry. The slave concubines who bore children integrated their genetics into the population. Circassian, Georgian, and Armenian bloodlines mixed with Persian, Turkish, Kurdish. The ethnic composition of modern Iran carries traces of the slave trade. Second, architectural legacy. The harem quarters in Isfahan, the Chihil Sultan, the Ali Kapu Palace with its music room designed for harem entertainment, the Hasht Behesht, 8 paradises built for harem use. These buildings remain. Tourists visit, take photos, admire the tilework, never knowing that behind those decorated walls, women were burned alive. Third, literary legacy. Persian poetry romanticized the harem, the beloved behind the veil, the unattainable beauty. What looks like romance was describing a slave system. Fourth, political legacy. The eunuch administrations, the networks of castrated bureaucrats. That administrative style influenced later Iranian governments. Even into the Qajar period, eunuchs held positions. Finally, historical amnesia. Modern discourse about Safavid Iran focuses on art and architecture, the glory of Isfahan, the Silk Road, the miniature paintings, the poetry, rarely the harem violence, rarely the slave trade, rarely the systematic exploitation that funded the beauty. Walked the streets of Isfahan, attended the court, saw the palace. He wrote 10 volumes of meticulous observations. Modern scholars call his work the finest Western scholarship on Safavid Iran. Montesquieu, Rousseau, Gibbon, and Helvetius all praised his accuracy. The Shirley brothers served the Shah. Robert Shirley stayed 9 years, learned Persian, fought in military campaigns, married a Circassian woman from the harem, Teresa. Their accounts are detailed, cross-checked against other sources. Adam Illyrius visited in 1636. Published 1647. His numbers on harem size match Chardin's. The Dutch East India Company maintained detailed records, trade agreements, population counts, financial ledgers. These weren't casual travelers making up stories. These were merchants, diplomats, jewelers, men with economic interests in accurate reporting. They cross-reference European sources with Iranian sources, identify biases, separate propaganda from fact. The convergence of evidence is overwhelming. The system existed, the violence happened, the numbers are reliable within reasonable margins. Not the biggest atrocity, but revealing. Shah Abbas II, the one historians call the last strong king, died October 26, 1666. His eunuchs immediately moved to control the succession. They engineered the crowning of Sam Mirza, his eldest son. The boy was crowned 4 days later. No time for rivals to organize. The eunuch network moved fast. Sam Mirza became Safi II. Then, 2 years later, convinced by court astrologers that the first coronation was ill-omened, had a second coronation and took the name Suleiman I. 2 coronations, 2 names. Because superstition mattered more than stability. This is the caliber of leadership the harem system produced. A man so uncertain he needed 2 tries at becoming Shah, and once crowned, he disappeared into the harem, drinking, sex, ignoring governance. For 28 years, while the empire crumbled. Captured women mourning their families, children ripped from Caucasus villages and marched south, girls trained to dance, boys castrated and assigned to guard duty, executions for disobedience, burnings for refusal, mass killings for dynastic security. All of it legal, all of it justified by power. All of it documented. Unmarked graves, some containing multiple bodies. Forensic analysis on the few preserved skeletons shows signs of trauma, broken bones, cut marks. Chemical analysis of soil layers from the period shows unusual concentrations of ash and bone fragments. Physical evidence matching the historical accounts. The ground itself testifies. And operated a slave system that consumed thousands of lives. Both things are true. The beauty and the blood, the silk and the suffering, the miniatures and the massacres. History isn't clean. Empires don't rise on kindness. And the most disturbing part? The Safavid harem system wasn't exceptional. It was normal. Standard practice across Islamic empires. The Abbasids did it. The Ottomans did it bigger. The Mughals in India did it. This was how power worked. This was the infrastructure of empire. We don't know all their names. We don't know exactly how each one died. But we know it happened. We know Shah Safi signed the order. We know the motive was power. We know it worked. The dynasty survived his reign, passed to his son, who burned women alive for different reasons. And the system continued for 90 more years, until it collapsed from within, devoured by its own appetite for control. That's not a moral. That's not a warning. That's just what happened. The receipts don't judge. They just count the bodies. 40 women dead in one night. 3 concubines burned alive. 1 wife stabbed to death. Multiple wives burned for biological functions. Princes blinded. Princes confined. Princes trained to be helpless. Daughters gifted. Sons castrated. Generations bought and sold. 235 years of systematic exploitation, documented, verified, cross-checked, real. This is the Safavid imperial harem. This is what it cost to be called great. This is what they never put on the tourism posters.